Sarah, and this is Lawyer Talk Thursday, live from Working Capital. And today I have the two candidates for District Attorney, Yvonne Rosales and James Montoya, here for the next hour to answer all the questions that you submitted and that you submitted through my account and FitFam. All right, so a couple of things. I'm gonna step back and I'm not moderating today's forum because, you know, the judge thing. So any questions that are asked do not reflect my opinion one way or the other. But I've got the best of the best to take my place, Miss Gabby D. So before I step out, here are the rules. Everybody has 1 minute to answer their questions. There will be questions that are presented to both of you, and then there'll be some stunners for each of you. So that's how it's gonna be working. So do not go over time, or I might throw some things. Take it away, guys.
Hey everyone, it's Gabby D. So happy to be here again. As you know, I've been an associate with Alexandra Serra, and we're more than happy to welcome this forum with two extremely qualified candidates. As a moderator, I'm here to keep the peace, allow them to get into the deets, and let's start with drama. So starting with James. All right, let's get the tea. Who are you? What is a DA, and why is a DA important?
Sure. So a lot of people don't realize what the district attorney actually does. The DA is the government lawyer that works with the police to investigate and solve all of the crime that happens here in El Paso. You know, we're the ones that ultimately file the charges in court, or we're the ones that fight for justice for the victims of crime. I'm the only one running for district attorney who actually works there right now, one of the assistant district attorneys in our office. For the last several years, my specialty have been the murder cases. I've worked on over 100 different homicide investigations here in El Paso, including the Walmart shooting, including the murder of Deputy Herrera. So I feel very ready, very prepared to handle those cases that happen. I want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to keep El Paso safe. The DA is a critical role in that. I think it's the DA's job, law enforcement's job, and our community working together is what makes El Paso such a safe community, and I want to keep it that way.
All right, Yvonne, same question.
Hi everybody, thanks for joining this podcast, and thanks you all for hosting it. I think it's wonderful that everybody gets to know their candidates before they go to vote beginning June 29th. So I've been a practicing attorney for nearly 20 years, and I started my career straight out of law school and started at the district attorney's office. I worked my way up from misdemeanors into grand jury into felony cases, and I worked there for nearly 4 years. I worked just about every case that you can possibly see charged within the criminal justice system. After that, I decided to go into private practice, and I've been successfully managing my business since about 2005. With my criminal law experience, I decided it was time to branch out and expand my business. And you know, as a business owner, you always have to look to how you can increase revenue and get yourself more noticed in the community as a private attorney. So I also went into family law. So being the district attorney is a very important administrative position.
All right, Miss Yvonne, peppering off to our second question. So we've known a little bit about both of y'all's backgrounds. Let's talk about what your goals are for the office.
Okay. All right. My goal is to bring progressive movement and new policies and procedures into the DA's office. Right now, there's a huge backlog of cases, and I'm not talking about anything that was related to coronavirus. These backlogs had started occurring way before the coronavirus. So we just need to implement new policies and procedures. I want to implement the first mental health division to address cases where defendants who are suffering from bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, PTSD, where we start addressing those mental health issues rather than criminalizing them. I want to aggressively pursue the prosecution of animal cruelty cases, and I just want to bring in some reforms that are going to help us move forward in a positive direction where we can seek justice for this community. Alcohol, DWIs, drug possession charges, I want to start looking at the core of the problem where we're dealing with the substantive issues and not necessarily criminalizing those folks who need help.
Dear.
All right, James, same question.
So the three things that I want to do, number one, like I said, I want to keep El Paso safe. You know, we can have the best law enforcement agencies, they can solve the crime, they can make the arrest, but if you don't have competent, professional district attorneys handling those cases in court, those cases fall apart and injustices start to happen. So, I want to make sure that we're focused on the crimes that are most dangerous, the DWIs, the family violence, the burglaries, the robberies, the repeat offenders. At the same time, I also want to work to minimize and reduce the amount of taxpayer resources we spend on small marijuana cases, small drug cases. I want to make sure that we're focused on the crimes that really matter. I want to make sure that we handle the Walmart shooting correctly, Deputy Herrera's case correctly. I also want to establish a public integrity unit in the district attorney's office to investigate and review allegations of misconduct by public officials, whether that's people in school districts, elected officials in local government, or police officers, all public servants.
All right, James. So great answers. So while we're on that, we're talking about different levels of offender. What are your plans for first-time or low-level offenders?
Sure. So, I want to make sure that the hardest thing about being a DA is trying to figure out, is this someone who made a mistake that can be rehabilitated, or is this someone who's a danger to the community? And how are we going to address that danger? And so for me, for first-time offenders, for juvenile first-time offenders, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, I want to work on a diversion program that's called Treat Them Like Teenagers, because that's what they are. I want to make a program so that cases, when appropriate, are resolved in a way that will allow them to dismiss the case and either seal their record or get it expunged, to give them a chance. Adults will have to start looking at that differently, see if they qualify for this diversion program. But I'm really committed to expanding the cases that we divert to make sure that we're focused on the crimes that are most dangerous. And if that includes, like I said, giving people second chances when appropriate.
Okay, hold on. All right, so I said I wasn't going to say anything, but I am. Okay, just for educational purposes, right? When we say low-level offenders, what does that mean?
So for me, it's people that are accused of nonviolent misdemeanors.
Okay.
I think there's also, so for your viewers that might not know, there are also things called state jail felonies. And so those are the lowest levels of felonies. Some of them are nonviolent. Possession of a controlled substance less than a gram. That's a nonviolent offense. Forgery of a check. That is a nonviolent state jail felony. So for me, those are the kinds of crimes that I would be open to diverting away from prosecution, if that means giving someone another chance to avoid a conviction on their record. Because, like I said, those are not the crimes that we should be really taking to trial.
We take that one? Yes, ma'am.
So for clarification purposes, 17, 18, and 19-year-olds do not fall under the juvenile system. They are considered adults. Some 17-year-olds are on the fence. They can be indicted or brought into the adult system instead of going through the juvenile court system. So I just want to make sure that that distinction is made clear. So for first-time offenders, we need to go ahead and give them the opportunity to make their penance, make their peace, and then go about with their life. And again, we're talking about offenses that are nonviolent in nature. There's a lot of 21-year-olds. You get that, 21-year-old who, oh, all right, I get to go party and DWI. Well, okay, they made a mistake. It's not necessarily that we want to tag that with them for the rest of their life. So the current pretrial diversion program does not allow you to get an expunction. You sign away your rights to that expunction when you agree to go through the program. So I do want to eliminate that policy because the statute says you are entitled to the expunction.
All right. And I'm back again. I just can't help it. Okay.
You're
so,
a lawyer. You
I just can't help it. But this is education. I'm not asking questions. So an expunction is basically like a magic eraser to your record. If you've watched any of my videos, you know what that is. And so the current policies of the DA's office is you give up that right to expunge when you get pretrial diversion. And then I'm going to let Yvonne answer this one just because James got one, is what is diversion for the people that don't know what diversion is?
Really, it's the opportunity to do whatever the DA is asking you, community service, take a class, without a permanent conviction on your record, so that it does not affect you.
Gotcha.
Okay, so while we're on that topic, a lot of our viewers, a lot of our fans, Fit Fam, are in the younger demographics. They like to party, and one subject that is near and dear to many of their hearts is legalization of cannabis. So we're gonna start this off. James, support, for,
Sure.
against?
My personal opinion is yes. I think the legislature should. In my opinion, from the literature that I've read, I don't see how it's any more dangerous than tobacco or addictive than tobacco or more or less dangerous than alcohol. Frankly, I think alcohol is probably the more dangerous drug and, intoxicant. I can tell you how many murder cases that we've had where someone is drunk and does something very violent. I really think that it would be smarter to pursue a regulation system, but I think that's something for the legislature to decide. For right now, it's still illegal in the state of Texas, but my personal opinion is that it should. If I'm elected, I want to make sure we spend as few resources as possible prosecuting marijuana cases.
Okay, so I think everybody has a job to do and people need to stay within their own lanes. Legislators need to legislate and DAs need to make sure that the code of criminal procedure is enforced and that the laws are enforced, working alongside with law enforcement. So with that being said, I have read the research, so I know that there are some medicinal benefits to marijuana, the legalization of marijuana. But I think we also need to be very careful because, a person can also be charged with driving under the influence, and that could possibly be from a controlled substance. So I think we have to look at that aspect of it as well. But again, I'm not asking to be a legislator. I am asking to be elected as your next district attorney who's going to work with law enforcement and make sure that the laws are abided by. And again, with respect to the marijuana, without a lab result, we're not going to pursue charges.
Okay, so follow-up question, actually same vein. So when we're talking about first-time offenders, especially when we're talking about those crafty THC pens, cartridges, what are your thoughts, what are your opinions as far as offering a diversion program for someone who would otherwise be eligible if it were not for that offense? Yvonne?
Absolutely. When you're talking about personal use and no violent crime has been committed, we definitely want to take a look at offering that some kind of diversion program. I don't believe that somebody should be sent to the penitentiary just because it happens to fall within the classification of a felony offense, and that's all the person has ever been arrested for is the possession of the substance, and it is a personal use level. Let me just be very clear on that, as long as it is a personal use level. So again, I think rather maybe we try to see if there's a problem, if there's an addiction, we want to make sure that it's not something that goes down a more serious path. It's all about helping the community. Sometimes we have to help the defendants as well. I'm more of an approach to let's help everybody. Justice is not just for victims, but sometimes it can be for a defendant who just hasn't had the resources available to them.
James?
Sure. So, as some of you might know, for many, many years, there was a sentencing disparity in federal law between crack cocaine and powder cocaine. And what was happening is crack cocaine was severely more punished than powder cocaine. And there were serious racial biases in that sentencing scheme. And I'm afraid that the Texas legislature has kind of done the same thing with marijuana, where marijuana personal possession is treated as a misdemeanor, but personal possession of THC, of wax, of oil, no matter how little it is still a felony. In my opinion, that disparity is not right, and I think that's something the legislature needs to fix. And so if someone is found with a personal amount of THC oil, that is something that I think we should treat either with pretrial diversion or as a misdemeanor.
So, there's a little game changer here. A lot of our questions have been user submitted, but we do, to liven it up a little bit, have a wild card. So, from our wild card question, what one question would each of you ask the other? Yvonne, starting with you.
Okay, so recently with the normal debate, or forum rather, you made the statement that Black Lives Matter, but you've also admitted that you took a substantial contribution from the law enforcement unions. So first and foremost, how much was that contribution? And secondly, Since you made the statement that Black Lives Matter, are you willing to give back that money to the police union, or are you willing to contribute it to the Black Lives Matter cause?
Sure. So I would say of the total that I've raised and spent, less than 10% of that has been from the police union. So I would take issue with the description that it's substantial. I would say total, it's possible. I think it's $15,000. But we, like I said, of the total that we've raised and spent, that's less than 10%. You know, that money's been spent. I don't have it on in the campaign account right now. And I do still believe Black Lives Matter. And I don't think those views are incompatible. I'm proud to have the support of law enforcement. I'm not beholden to them. I think there are ways that they can improve, both nationwide and here in El Paso. And you know, I think they're members of our community just as well. Proud to have their support.
So this one's open to both of you, whoever would like to answer first. But we hear a lot of talk of these units, integrity, corruption. Can you guys elaborate a little bit more on what your respective views are and how you plan on implementing those within your respective offices? James?
Oh, sure.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat the question again?
Okay,
Sorry.
so we hear a lot of talk about public integrity unit, corruption units, these specialized units, which would be new to respective right offices. So can you explain as far as what your views are on these specialized units or a specialized unit? A little bit more detail?
Yeah, sure. So in the DA's office, there are attorneys that are assigned to handle certain kinds of crimes. For instance, right now I'm in the Special Crimes Unit, which handles homicides and other major violent crime here in El Paso. We also have a rape unit. We have a white collar unit that handles major frauds, you know, big thefts. One of the units that I want to create is a public integrity unit to investigate and review allegations of official misconduct by public servants. Like I said, whether that's people in the school districts, you know, we've had issues there. People in local government, we've obviously had issues there, or in our law enforcement agencies. I want to create a specialty set of lawyers and investigators to work on these cases as quickly as possible. I think time is of the essence on these kinds of cases. I want to work them as transparently as possible so that people understand, hey, why we're making the decisions that we do.
Miss Yvonne.
Sure, so it's pretty much along the same lines. I've been saying this for a long time now. The Public Integrity Unit has to be willing to examine cases involving public corruption, police misconduct, and I believe that we need to be working with an independent agency, allowing the Texas Rangers to be a part of this these investigations in order for the public to be assured that there's independent investigation into these cases. I know sometimes a lot of people within the community feel that if your own law enforcement is investigating their own officers, is there really any kind of integrity within that investigation? So in order to assure the public that there's integrity of the investigation, we'll have the Texas Rangers involved in those cases. And really it's about, if new evidence comes to light on a conviction of a case, we need to examine that to make sure people are not wrongfully convicted and that they can be exonerated, just like in the Daniel Villegas case.
All right.
Okay, I made it much worse. All right. All right, so no going over time. But the other thing is we forgot the opposite wild card. So James does get to ask the wild card, right? Anytime there's a wild card, and there may be more than one, each of you get to ask the question.
Okay.
So
my question for Ms. Rosales is, you know, you've stated that you're an administrator, that you've run your own law firm. My question is, how many employees do you actually have at your law firm? And what kind of budget do you have annually that would compare to a government agency like the DA's office?
Okay, well, I have served in an administrative capacity. I've been a supervisor, I've been a manager, I've done employee evaluations, I've had to do budgets and budget cuts, and quite honestly, I think that really does show experience over you. You've never served in a supervisory capacity.
My question was, how many employees do you have?
Well, I'm going to finish this. So over the years, I've probably over about 15 employees, which is way more than you have ever done. And also throughout my career in college, when I worked, throughout college, I did work in management positions where I was overseeing employees and doing performance evaluations and talking to general managers about budgets and spending and payroll and profit and loss. So yes, I have that experience.
All right, and just as wild cards may get a little heated here, right? I mean, we're generally in a forum concept, but the wild cards might get heated because people have separate stances on things. At the end, we will give you both your time to either close it out or respond to anything that was said during this, okay? So, keep it friendly, people.
Alrighty, man. Well, we're
People
not-
don't want friendly hours.
But hey, I mean, you want to debate, let's rock, okay? Like, let's go.
Alright, so while we're talking about makeup and office dynamics, it's well understood as far as the diversity within the office as it stands right now, especially in leadership positions, isn't directly representational of the El Paso community. How do you respond to that, and how do you plan to change that, if at all?
My turn. Or...
Yeah.
I think we need to have a little bit more inclusion. I don't think it is necessarily representative of our entire community within the El Paso district. So I think we definitely, when we're looking for usually a government job in the DA's office is a job that is sought by kids straight out of law school. And I don't mean kids disparagingly, I'm just that old. So everyone's young to me. So anyone who's straight out of law school, that's typically your first job. So I think we need to be more active about recruiting people of different ethnicities. I don't recall anybody who's of Asian descent working within the DA's office. I can't think of anybody who's there right now.
Shout out to Kenny Lamb. Hey, Kenny.
And I'm sorry, Kenny, I just it's been a while, you know, we've been on lockdown since March. so yeah, we need to expand.
James.
Yeah, I'm committed to having an inclusive and diverse staff. I mean, I can tell you most of the senior leadership in our office after Mr. Esparza are women. You know, my supervisors up and down the chain of command in the office right now are all women. I think that's something that the office should be commended on doing. Certainly, I'm committed to having recruiting fairs, not only here in El Paso, but going to other law schools throughout the state of Texas to recruit, bring folks in. You know, we obviously don't have a law school here in El Paso, so everyone that we hire had to go out of town for law school. And so I want to make sure that we're going to Tech, we're going to St. Mary's, we're going to the University of Houston to hire and as many really as El Pasoans as we can get. You know, we want people to stay here. We want people to stay in this office, make a career out of being a prosecutor. You know, a lot of folks, they start there, they leave, like Ms. Rosales. I want to work to create a professional prosecution corps.
Go St. Mary's.
Yeah.
Woo! The Rattlers. All right, so we just got a user-submitted question, and this seems to be a topic that you've addressed frequently. But let's talk about Daniel Villegas. What is your stance on the case now?
Sure. So, I mean, my stance on the case now, I would not have participated in the prosecution of Mr. Villegas if I didn't believe that he was guilty. Based on all of the evidence that I myself reviewed over several years, I felt comfortable going forward with the case. I believe that he is the one that committed the crime. You know, I believe his cousin, when he confessed to his cousin, I believe that he was telling the truth when he said that. You know, like I said, I put it based off of what I've seen. I stand by the case. I bear no personal animosity to Mr. Villegas. You know, I certainly, you know, the case in my mind, it's over. He's been acquitted, and I'm ready to move on to, I think we have far more important cases pending right now.
Alrighty, Yvonne, we have one for you as well, now in the hot seat. So you received, or the question is, receiving criticism for not trying as many serious felony cases as James. How would you respond to that and your ability to move forward as a DA?
So the typical growth plan within the DA's office is when you start there, you work in misdemeanors and you work your way up the chain and you start earning your stripes. I wasn't privileged like Mr. Montoya to enter the DA's office and then work misdemeanors for a couple of months and then be put into the homicide unit. Those are specialized units that are typically reserved for people who have at least been a trial attorney for at least 2 to 3 years within the DA's office itself. So because of that, I was not able to have those perks when I was working at the DA's office, because by the time I had reached that fourth year mark, I was already working within the drug task force for a while, and at that point I just decided it was time to leave and go out and manage my own law firm.
Okay, hold on. We may switch this up a little bit. All right. So when I yell rebuttal, I'm gonna give somebody 15 seconds. Okay, either way, right? So we're gonna throw a wild card in
we
here,
like that. We like
right?
that. Yeah.
I like it. All right, take it away, Miss Gabby. Gabby, next question.
Oh, okay. All right, so current DA, ex-DA, let's get the tea. How much money does the office get for the cases that y'all prosecute? Fact or fiction?
In terms of general, I will tell you, so the office's annual budget is slightly over $16 million now, between $16 and $17 million. That pays for the salaries for almost 200 people, 90 lawyers, 100 staff members. That would include secretaries, clerks, investigators, victim services, advocates, and so that's what our budget is right now.
But do you get money for the number of cases
Oh,
prosecuted?
no, I do not. No, I'm a salaried employee. I get paid the same no matter how many cases I take, everyone is a salaried employee. We're not tied to how many cases we win or lose. We're not tied to how many cases we take to trial. That's kind of an advantage of being a public servant is you know how much you're gonna make for the year, and it's not dependent on guilties or not guilties or anything like that. You don't get bonuses for
And so
your
I'm going to
conviction.
clarify a little bit.
Sure.
What about domestic violence cases?
Sure.
Cases that, obviously a lot of people seem to have, it's a pervasive problem here in El Paso. But does that take into effect as far as the conviction rate for any grants, anything with respect to that?
No, so our office gets a grant from the Violence Against Women's Act from the Department of Justice. The grant is $150,000, and it pays for 2 separate positions. It pays for an attorney, a supervisor pays for half of her salary, and it also pays for half of an investigator's salary. But the grant is not tied to how many cases we have or are we successful in prosecuting them. It's every year we make an application to the Department of Justice. We explain to them, hey, this is how we're using this money. This is the program that it's going for. Right now it's used for a 24-hour contact program, which is every domestic violence case within 24 hours of it happening, someone from our office is going out there and meeting with the victim to let them know about the services available to them and let them know and get their feeling for the court process. So that's what the grant pays for.
Yvonne, would you have any plans as far as doing any incentive-based programs or creating any such program?
No, I think every person who's accused of a crime needs to be treated fairly, and the plea bargain recommendation should not be based on whether you're going to be receiving grant money for a conviction or not. I know that those applications for grants do look on how successful you are with your conviction rates and whether it's going up or down, because if the people who are giving out these grants don't feel that money is being of any use, then of course they're not going to give you the grant money that you applied for. So my idea is to make sure that every attorney within our office has the opportunity and experience and leadership to try every single type of case that is available within the district attorney's office.
So going back to that, we talk a lot about family violence. Can you explain to our viewers right now, what are red RECs and do you plan to continue with that policy? James.
Sure. So a red writing rec was something that the district attorney, Jaime Esparza, he implemented, I can't remember exactly how many years ago, it's been some time. And essentially the idea was that the assistant DA handling the case could not go below that without some kind of permission. Could not settle the case below that. My understanding is that was an attempt to get people in our office to take these cases seriously, because domestic violence is a very serious problem here in El Paso, In my experience, I've handled murders where there was substantial domestic violence history, where earlier state intervention might have been helpful in possibly preventing that homicide, possibly from getting worse in the future. And so it's something I want to continue being aggressive on. Am I going to continue the red writing recs themselves? That's something that I really haven't decided, but I want all the attorneys in my office to know that we're going to still continue to treat this crime very seriously.
So to expand on the red writing, every time a defense attorney sees it, we shudder. And that's basically because of the fact that there's no room, there's no room for negotiations. So it basically treats people who have been convicted of any crime the same as a person who has a clean criminal history. It doesn't take into account the severity of the offense. It doesn't take into account whether the victim wants the charges dropped or not. As the state, you have to protect a victim from themselves, and sometimes you have to look further. You have to talk to the victim and find out whether the victim is just saying they want to drop the charges because out of fear or intimidation from the defendant, or if they're truly trying to salvage their marriage and there's never been an offense before, and there's the person has been willing to do some kind of family violence counseling or marital counseling or spiritual counseling. And I think we need to give a victim a voice in what kind of plea bargains are offered. And I think that's, the red writing has definitely led to the backlog.
And so this is going to be a little bit of a three-part question. We'll pepper back off of James and back to you, Yvonne. So, in cases with family violence, where you have an instance where a victim either recants,
Alleged
victim recants, moves forward with an affidavit of non-prosecution, meaning they don't want to move forward with the case, how would you proceed?
So it depends on a case-by-case basis. There are plenty of scientific studies and literature that show that victims in domestic violence cases want to stay with their abuser, want to stay with the offender for familial ties, financial ties, emotional ties. There are a number of factors. These cases are some of the most complex cases that a DA handles. And sometimes we get victims that say, you know, it happened, but I don't want to prosecute. Those are handled one way. And then there are cases where a victim says, I made it totally up, none of it happened. And those are handled a different way. I think when we're weighing both of those scenarios, we have to look at what the other evidence is. You know, what did the 911 call? What was said on the 911 call? What did the officers see at the scene? What kind of visible injuries are there? You know, what other evidence is there? What is the family members telling us? So we have to consider all of that before we decide to resolve a case.
So that ties into why I was saying that I definitely wanted to get rid of that red writing policy, because the red writing policy doesn't, you know, it basically says you will seek a conviction. You cannot offer deferred probation, you cannot offer PTD for dismissal, you cannot offer that the defendant take an anger management class, and with having a victim sign the affidavit of non-prosecution and then dismissing the case. Again, at least for very limited plea bargaining and assessing the situation individually. That's why we do have to talk to the victim. We have to employ
Alleged victim, Yvonne.
The alleged victim, I'm sorry. And see, I'm already getting ready for office. Just kidding. So we do have to have some trained social workers who are going to be able to talk to these victims. From my understanding and my experience, I don't believe that we have any trained social workers or trained psychology majors who are actually working within the victims unit in order to speak with these alleged victims. I'm sorry, Alex.
And so, all right, we make it a trial day. We have our alleged victim, and they tell you, or they tell your DA, I don't want to prosecute, I don't want to show up and testify. Not because I'm scared, but because I don't want to. I just want to get this over with. Baby daddy, brother, cousin, what have you. How do you
Because
proceed?
family violence is not only male and female or partner on partner, right? Family violence can be brother on sister,
Roommates.
mom. Yep, absolutely. So I think we can all agree you handle those cases differently than the traditional domestic violence.
So,
Statement, not question.
right,
Okay, go ahead.
All things considered, how do you proceed with that? How do you proceed with someone who is unwilling to testify? Once again, we have that they're not afraid, they just don't want to testify.
Sure. I think it just depends, again, on the facts and circumstances of each particular case. There are some cases where we can go forward without the complaining witness, without the victim's testimony, where we can prove the case from a 911 call with an excited utterance. You know, I know that's a legal term of art, but it's a 911 call that's made in the moment. You know, we can make a case with a police officer's testimony with photographs of a visible injury. You know, if a victim comes in and has, you know, at the time of the offense, you know, a really severe black eye, and on the day of trial they're saying, hey, I don't want to prosecute, that's not something, we're going to have to weigh that very, very seriously. You know, we're going to take into account the victim's wishes, the complaining witness's wishes, but to say that we're going to handle them all one way this way or one way all this way, that's not justice in my opinion.
And that's absolutely, again, why I stated from the get-go that I want to eliminate that policy. Why are we going to save taxpayer dollars? Why are we going to waste your time as a potential juror, especially now in an era of the pandemic issue? It's going to be hard enough getting into court, much less trying to deal with these cases during jury trials. So again, if the initial prosecutor who had the case in their hands, who did the evaluation, was able to consult with their colleagues and make an educated decision, and if there's any guess on what they're doing, they can always talk to their supervisors. That's what the experienced lawyers in supervisory positions are there for, to assist the young people or just to consult with each other and advise each other. And why are we letting it get to trial date before we decide to have a dismissal? That is a waste of taxpayer dollars, and it's a waste of your time as a potential juror, especially in COVID time. So again, we need to get rid of that red riding wreck. This could have been handled at the get-go.
Is bail next?
We're gonna do DWR. Let's talk about bail.
Let's talk about bail, because I'm going to come back in. All right. Hey, let's talk about bail. Okay, so bail reform is a hot topic. All across Texas, there's been lawsuits filed. You guys know about all of this. El Paso has done a great job in creating a system where we take into account all kinds of things, your job, the people that are at home, your criminal history, your mental health, all that good stuff. Okay, so there are all kinds of bail. We do cash or surety bail here, which means you could pay the full amount in cash. If your bail is, you know, $1,500, you can pay the $1,500, get that back when the case is over. Or you can pay about 10% of it to a bonding company, so that's what a surety is. So it's not an all cash bail system, right? There was some confusion on questions on that on FitFam. It's not all cash bail, it's cash or surety. Or there's what's called a PR bond, where they let you out of jail without paying. So, in consideration of that, question.
Let's be real. Let's look at El Paso community and the dynamics. Most of our citizens, or most of our people, live below the poverty line. How do you balance the concerns of individuals who cannot afford bail, who have not been convicted, with the safety of the community?
Sure. I'm committed to individualized assessments. You know, if there is a homeless person who was arrested for criminal trespass and the bond is set at $400 and they can't make that, in my opinion, should that person stay in jail for weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? No. To me, that's not just, it's not right. We always have to be cognizant of the fact that for every person, everybody that we're sticking in that jail, taxpayers are paying for it. Okay? And so I want to make sure that the people that we're paying to put in our jail are the people we want to be there. You know, I'm not opposed to PR bonds in some cases, but there are also repeat offenders, frequent flyers that come in out of the jail all the time, and we got to ask ourselves, what are we doing wrong? You know, that man that stabbed that girl over at McDonald's, he was let out on a PR bond. We were opposed to that. That is something that I want to continue to be opposed to. I think every case we're going to have to look at individually.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to be keeping somebody incarcerated just because they can't afford a bond. A bond is strictly put into place under the law in order to assure your appearance into court. The only problem what you're dealing with when you let a homeless person out on PR bond is that chances are you're probably never going to see them back in court. So I think you have to address those cases a little bit differently than you would the average case, because let's be real, right? A homeless person, how are they going to get notice of court? It's not going to happen, right? So if you take the perspective of using a bonding company or use a split bond, for example, then we have a better way of making sure that somebody comes back and answers to the courts. When you're dealing about somebody, you can have a possession for personal use, but if the guy lives in California, the reality is, how do we get them back? When you have a bonding company involved in the process, they have a little more incentive to come back.
All right, I'm calling rebuttal on that one.
Sure. I think every case has to be assessed differently. For me, I want to make sure that the people that we're keeping there are people who are dangerous, people who are violent. Those are the people who belong in jail. Like I said, we should not be keeping someone there simply because they can't make the bond, if it would otherwise be someone that could get out with the resources of an average person.
And I'm talking about not just using a homeless person example. So Yvonne, a response in just a regular vanilla case, not involving homeless?
Yeah, and just a regular vanilla case, we need to allow people the individualized assessment, taking into account their ties to the community, their employment history, just making sure that we can get them back in, and especially now with COVID running rampant, we don't want to expose anybody and potentially be set up for a lawsuit.
So we go through bonds, we talked about domestic violence. Let's talk about another issue that is a big thing in this community, DWIs. What changes or additions would you see as a district attorney to the policies to address, to the current policies, either the creation of new ones, revamping what we have now within your office? How would you address this issue here?
I definitely want to take a more humanist or a different approach. I'm calling it the humanistic approach, to where we are a little bit more in touch with the defendant. What is going on in your life? Was it a one-time deal? Did you just find out that your spouse has cancer? Did you just get served with divorce papers? Was it just a dumb mistake? Is it something that we're finding through an assessment through the probation department that you are actually suffering from alcoholism or some kind of substance abuse addiction problem? If those are the types of cases, or that's the scenario, then I want to make sure that we address those cases, not so much with jacking up community service hours or jacking up the length of time you're on probation. Let's get you into some kind of treatment and let's get you the help you need so that you don't come back into the system.
So people can have alcohol addictions, but they don't have driving addictions. And this is a problem that has plagued El Paso. In my opinion, it plagues the entire state of Texas. Texas is not a state that has vast amounts of public transportation. People like their land here, they like their property. Texas is a state that's committed to growing. And in my opinion, I think that contributes significantly to DWIs. The numbers, I guarantee you, the more officers we have on the DWI task force, the more DWI arrests are going to be made. This is a cultural problem that we need to change. I think we need serious legislative change. Here in Texas, it's not a felony until your third DWI. There are some states where your second DWI, that's a felony. I think I would be supportive making a second DWI a state jail felony, because we need to do something different than what's happening now. And in my mind, it has to be a cultural and societal change to lower the DWIs that are happening.
All right, I'm calling rebuttal on that one, Yvonne.
Well, if it is
15 seconds.
If it is a cultural issue, then you haven't addressed the problem. If you haven't given the person the treatment and the resources and the support that they need in order to start addressing the alcoholism.
Okay, and James.
No, we all know people who do DWI, friends or family members, and we don't stop them. That's where it has to start. We have to stop the people that we know from doing that kind of crime, and that is something that's going to require everyone's buy-in.
All right, so wildcard time. Same question, James, you're going to start with Yvonne. Yvonne, you're going to follow up with a question for James.
Sure. My question for Ms. Rosales, when was your last felony jury trial that you tried to a verdict, to a guilty or not guilty?
Oh gosh, let's see, we've been locked down on COVID for a while. Honestly, I can't remember. I remember the last time, the times that I have had things set for trial, honestly, they've gotten dismissed the day of trial. So, I mean, when I've had my cases set for trial, they've ended up getting dismissed. Mr. Montoya, you have only been a licensed attorney for 6 years, and you have known nothing else, no other life experience. You're 29 years old, you haven't had any other jobs. Why do you feel that you're the qualified person to be the administrator of the next DA's office when your own mentor, Mr. Esparza, hasn't even come out to support you?
I think Mr. Esparza wants the public to decide who should be the next district attorney. You know, he's been in office for quite some time. I've had conversations with him about it, and he thinks it's best to let the community decide. I feel very ready, very prepared. You know, I've tried the tough cases. I've tried the complex cases. I've tried the hard cases. I go in front of juries all the time. My last trial happened while this campaign was happening. Back in November, I tried a soldier for killing a young boy out past the jail annex out in Montana. I did that even while this campaign was going on. Even in September, I tried Joel Garcia, the man that killed those 3 kids, you know, Joshua and Isaiah Deal, Shannon Del Rio, out there on Christmas Eve. I did that in the middle of this campaign. I'm ready to do this job. I feel very confident that I can lead this office in the most important aspects of the job.
Okay, so that was about trial experience that
Whoa,
didn't
whoa,
address
whoa,
administrative.
Boss lady did not call rebuttal.
Boss lady,
Boss lady did not call
rebuttal.
rebuttal on that one. All right. Hey, you guys said you'd come to a forum, not a debate. If you want to have a debate, I'm open next week. That's all I'm saying. All right. So, next question.
All right. So, given a lot of the negative attention to law enforcement within the media, let's bring some positivity to this. What is something that you feel that El Paso Police Department is doing right?
Sure. So I think the El Paso Police Department does a phenomenal job engaging with the public and community policing. They believe in that. I've talked to so many voters. The vast majority of them are very grateful and very supportive to our law enforcement. And I think you can tell that in how safe this community is. You know, we would not be safe as safe as we are if the community didn't trust our law enforcement agencies. You know, people here are willing to report crime, they're willing to cooperate with the investigation, they're willing to come and testify in court, sometimes against their neighbors, their friends, and even sometimes their family members. And they wouldn't do that unless they trust us to get it right. And I can tell you there are some years here in El Paso where we solve 100% of the murders that happen, 100% clearance rate. Compare that to other cities, other major metropolitan areas where it's 30, 40, 50%. I think that is a testament to the El Paso Police Department.
Yeah, so I don't think El Paso is suffering from a lot of the problems that are going on across the nation. I honestly don't feel that way. And I think the majority of El Pasoans don't feel that we're having those same issues that other cities across the nation are having. I honestly believe that everybody, for the most part, I believe, is supporting the police officers. We have to remember that the same men and women in blue and the sheriff's department, everybody in law enforcement who have been under tight scrutiny these days, these are the same individuals who put their lives on the line and went out and took care of the Walmart shooting. So I think, you know, we were praising them just, you know, under a year ago. I think we need to remember that the same people that have been criticized recently are the same individuals who have been protecting us and who protected everybody during the Walmart incident.
Right. So I think we can all agree that we're very lucky to live in this community, right? We all work together, we all grow together as a city. But on the rare chance that there are allegations of police brutality, will that affect your office's decision to either indict or move forward with the charges?
Sure. For me, no. I mean, I am committed to having these cases handled fairly, quickly, and transparently. I think that's what the community wants. I think that's what the community expects. They expect us to be that independent oversight over the police department, and that's a role that I embrace, that I realize. You know, I myself, I've prosecuted a police officer. There was a police officer who was working an off-duty job. He committed a hit and run where he killed somebody, and then faked in a crash to make it seem like he had gotten the crash some other way. And we handled that case. He was found guilty, he pled guilty, and he was sent to the penitentiary for 8 years. And I think law enforcement, they get it, that if they mess up, they gotta be held accountable. When they do right, we gotta praise them. But I think our system works because we hold each other accountable, and we need to do so transparently.
So when there is a case involving an officer, I think it's best to allow the Texas Rangers in and conduct their own independent investigation. That way their reports can be released to the public, and we can give a public press release as to why the case was indicted, wasn't indicted, and we can even go so far as to bring in a special prosecutor so that there's no, depending on what the verdict comes out at the end of that trial, nobody can ever question the integrity of that trial by having had an independent investigation and having a special prosecutor appointed to the case. Now, what a special prosecutor is that you bring somebody out from the outside of the DA's office to handle that particular case. So I think that would add to the integrity. There's a national movement now calling for all DAs to not accept political campaign contributions, and I, for one, would be very committed to doing that, just so that the community would not be accused or even have a shadow of a doubt that that money influenced me.
Ooh, surprise question. All right, Yvonne. So, following up, has your position changed with respect to the use of body cameras? Why or why not?
Has it changed?
Yes.
Oh, okay. No, I absolutely do believe in the use of the body cameras. Not only does it protect a citizen, but it also protects any officer against an allegation that may be false of police brutality. It saves the taxpayers hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in litigation or any kind of settlement fees. But more importantly than anything, it protects the integrity of the case. And there's no question, you can't dispute what happened when you have the video cam. And we have to have policies and procedures in place that as soon as the officer, it has to.
So I'm gonna interrupt you there.
Oh, yeah.
I understand the importance of that, but I know recently in the news, I don't know if many of our viewers are aware of an instance outside of El Paso, outside of Texas, where the law officers turned off their body cameras.
That's what I was getting to.
Okay.
I was gonna say that the part of the policies and procedures for the use of the body cam needs to be kind of at the point where we are going to initiate the stop. So as soon as the cameras turn on, once the lights go on because the police officer is going to initiate the stop, that's at the point where the body cam needs to start running, because of the fact you need to protect the integrity of the officer getting out of the vehicle.
James?
Sure. I think all the police officers that I've talked to, once they got used to the cameras, they like them. I think in the vast majority of cases, the cameras always, justify the officer, and they substantiate the officer's claims. Right now, the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, all of the deputies, the detectives, the patrol officers, they have body cams. I know the El Paso Police Department has been talking about it. I know one of the issues that Chief Allen brought up really isn't so much the cost of the cameras itself, so much as the storage capability, because we need hard drives, many computer servers to store the amount of video that's generated. If the officer's driving around making stops throughout their whole 8-hour shift, we're gonna have literally hours and hours of video from each officer every day, week after week. And so, to me, the bigger challenge that the city has to address are the servers that are going to store these voluminous amounts of video.
All right, James, so we have a fan fave question for you.
Sure.
So you've previously spoken in favor of the cite and release policy before city council. What is that and why?
Sure. So for a very long time, when an officer comes across somebody that's in the street, they had two options, and they committed some kind of a minor crime. They could either arrest them and take them down to jail, or they could cut them loose and say, hey, I'm just going to use my discretion and let that go. Cite and release was an attempt to create something in the middle where an officer could give someone a citation, like a traffic ticket, and the person would have to come back to court at a later determined time to face that charge. The Texas legislature created that back, I think, in 2012, and they've done it for several crimes: misdemeanor marijuana possession, graffiti, criminal mischief, theft, shoplifting below a certain value. Different agencies throughout the state have adopted that. Here in El Paso, we haven't. I think it would be conceptually, I'm supportive of it. It's something that would require the cooperation of law enforcement, and ultimately it'll be up to their discretion whether to make an arrest, issue a citation, or let someone go home.
Yvonne, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think most people feel that there was some progress made with this, but my personal philosophy is this: if you can't prove that the crime occurred, then you should not be having anybody answer to anything. So the DPS has stated that they will not test any substances that are what are considered personal use, which is part of the whole cite and release program. So, it's great when you think about the other options that were available. Cite and release will allow you to not have to go to court, you just pay your fine and do your community service. But if you can't prove that what you were doing was actually illegal, then why should you have to account for it at all? The law states that unless it's 0.3 or more concentration of THC, then it's illegal. And if it's not, then it's not illegal. So if you don't have anything that's illegal, why should you be answering to it?
Okay, Yvonne, we're gonna start with you. So, name the 3 things that the DA's office is currently doing right.
That is currently doing right? Yes. Time's up.
It's like positive, positive, positive.
All right.
You do need to advocate strongly for victims of domestic violence or family violence. Again, because as Alex stated earlier, it's not just about spouses, it's about your partners, and it could be your brother or sister. So the 24-hour contact is great. But other than that, there's just a lot of policy and reforms that I really think need to be changed. And I've advocated for so many policy changes. I think that they're currently staffed with good attorneys, and I think they have had the opportunity. If they didn't have so many policies tying their hands, I think they could move those cases along better, and allowing them to have discretion would allow them to use their skills that I know that most of them possess. And I look forward to working with them because I think they're great trial attorneys, and we just need to make sure that they're allowed to do the job that they were hired to do.
James?
Sure. So I think we do an excellent job making contact and working with victims. We've received numerous national awards for doing that. I think the 24-hour contact program has been phenomenal. We've had other DA's offices throughout the state and throughout this country come here to look at how we handle domestic violence cases. I think that is a testament to the job that we are doing here. I think we have excellent trial attorneys. This is an office. I will tell you this. You hear a lot about people asking, well, did you win? What's your win percentage? Is this an office that values winning at all costs? That is not this office. What is important to this office is, are you making an effort? Are you going to trial? Are you trying to advocate for the victims? Are you trying to advocate for the state? I've never felt pressure to handle a case against the way that I thought it should be handled appropriately. And I think we do that an excellent job, and I think we're handling violent crime very well for a city of our size.
Okay, so here's we're back on. We took more than an hour, so Instagram kicked us off because we're all lawyers and we are wordy as hell. So you have submitted a ton of questions, more than I can possibly keep up with, and I don't want to keep these people here for 8 hours. So if we didn't get to your question, you can submit it to us and we can submit it to them, and then they can answer it on their own forums, Instagram, Facebook, if they wanted to do something else, videos. I know James does some videos, so things like that, please submit them to us and we will get them to the candidates. The other thing is right now, immigration questions are not going to be handled because that's an entire session in and of itself. how immigration laws work, how DAs cannot consider some of those things when making their recommendations. So we're going to stay away from that issue. If the candidates want to attack that issue or provide any feedback on that, I encourage them to do it on their own. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and I'll leave it to Gabby.
Alrighty, who do we finish off on? Yvonne?
That was the last one.
Alright.
I think I answered last about the 3 things the office is doing.
Yes.
Yes.
So let's talk about improvement. What is the one thing that you'd want to change or you'd want to improve from the office with your administration?
Again, I want to allow the DAs to use their discretion on their case-by-case analysis. I want to get rid of the radicalized approach to the cases and allow the lawyers to be lawyers and make the judgment call. There's supervisors, there's plenty of safety nets in place to make sure that the right call is made on each individual case. Again, I'm very big on prosecuting aggressively animal cruelty cases. I want to implement the first mental health program where we're monitoring cases where defendants are suffering from PTSD or mental health issues. I want to work closely with the Veterans Court program to make sure that they have a true Veterans Court program and it's utilized the way it was supposed to be, so that the individual, after all their treatment and all the programs that they've gone through, that they are allowed to have that case dismissed and expunged.
For the record, that was way more than one, so more than one.
Sure.
If you like.
Sorry.
You're good.
So the
Just
two,
gotta be fair.
Yeah, no,
Right.
the 2 big things that I want to change is I want to work to minimize significantly the number of misdemeanor marijuana cases that we charge every year. Every year we file about 11,000 misdemeanor cases. So that's DWIs, family violence, shoplifting, marijuana. Of that 11,000, about 2,000, 2,100, 2,200 are misdemeanor marijuana cases. So almost 20%. I want to get that number down to as little as possible. I want to try to get those cases out of our system so that we can focus on the family violence, on the DWIs. Second big change that I want to work on, like I said, is the public integrity unit. I want to make sure that we have a dedicated team of lawyers and investigators working these kinds of very important cases, the kinds of cases that the public cares about. I want to make sure that we handle them as, like I said, as expeditiously and transparently as possible, and to the maximum extent possible, release the findings from those kinds of investigations.
And for our last wild card, so Yvonne, I think you got to start this round off. So question for James, and then James will follow up with necessary rebuttals if need be.
Okay, so let's clarify for the record exactly what administrative experience do you have in order to be the next elected DA?
So I supervise at my office a secretary, an investigator that I ask to do things for me. They're the ones that directly report, do the things that I tell them to do. I have a victim services person, an advocate that coordinates my contact with the victims. Those are the 3 people that I oversee at the office. Separately, one of the things I'm really proud of doing outside the office is I served as a board member for El Paso County Emergency Services District Number 1, which oversees the Horizon Volunteer Fire Department. I was a board member there from 2014 to 2016. It was a 5-person board that we oversaw a budget of over $1 million. And I'm really proud to say that during that experience, we were able to get our volunteer fire department and turn it into a paid fire department. So the city of Horizon in Far East El Paso County had 24/7 paid fire coverage, and that's something that I'm very proud of administering. Oh, my question for Ms. Rosales. You said that you had hired 15 people and reviewed them over the course of your career. When I checked your profile on the Texas Bar website, it says that the firm is sized between 2 and 5 employees. Is that not accurate? I mean, how many other attorneys are in your law firm right now?
Right now, it's just myself and my business associate.
Okay.
Alrighty then. So obviously we're talking about presidential elections. We have an election year. So no DA is without their right-hand man or woman. Have you made a decision as to who your first assistant will be, and are you willing to share that with us?
Sure, I'll take it. I have not. I'm not going to be so presumptuous to think that this election is a foregone conclusion. The transition planning, there's going to be plenty of time to have a transition between July 14th and when Mr. Esparza's election or his term ends on December 31st. That's 6 full months. I plan on conducting interviews. And so no, I have not decided who my first assistant is going to be. I have a few people in mind, but I have not shared that with anyone else. So I'm not planning on sharing that with you guys.
I do have some individuals in mind, people who have been practicing criminal law for over 20 years and very well experienced attorneys. Not only do they have administrative experience, but they also have a lot of trial experience. So I have thought about this because I know that 6 months can go at the snap of a finger. I know that this election won't seem long, but it really did fly by. So there's just going to be so much to take into consideration that I already do have plans and procedures on how we will do a smooth transition. We will have the application process, just like Mr. Esparza did when he took over, and he asked everybody to reapply. That was sound advice, and so I plan to do the same. Just in all fairness, we're going to have everybody reapply because I know that some people will be retiring, and that's just because of the longevity they've had in the office.
Okay, is it time to close?
Yes, it is.
All right, I think given a few heated moments, I think 3 minutes is fair for each side. Okay, 3 minutes, you can do rebuttal, you can do whatever you want, but the main question is?
Well, 3 minutes to tell us why we should vote for you. And why it's important to register to vote, guys. Register.
And vote for DA, y'all. If you haven't learned that over this whole freaking hour, I don't know. It's lost on you. But DA is an extremely, extremely important position. All right, guys? So please
Yes,
vote.
especially with all the marches, it's been great to see our community be so active. We did some lawyer talks a few weeks ago regarding making our voices known. Another way to do that is through voting, so it's important. We have 2 candidates here who will oversee all the criminal offenses here in El Paso, Texas. So what matters to you, get informed, cast your vote, and make your decision.
All right, who wants to go first?
Sure,
Yes?
I'll go
Okay.
first, sure.
All right.
So I hope over the course of this hour, it's been impressed upon everyone watching how important this election is. This race, the DA's office, doesn't get, like I said, quite the same amount of press coverage as city council races or congressional races. But I can guarantee you, if you're a victim of a crime, you care who your DA is. If you're accused of a crime, you should care who your DA is. If you know anyone who is a victim of a crime or accused of a crime, you should care who your DA is. If you're a juror and a citizen and a taxpayer, you should care who your DA is. And there are very few other officials in elected office that have the discretion and the responsibility that's almost unlimited. I mean, if the DA says, I'm not prosecuting this person, it doesn't happen. That is not appealable. And so this is a position that requires competence, experience, integrity. And these are all attributes that I feel really confident and comfortable. I feel like if you know me, if you know anyone who knows me, they would tell you that I'm the right person for this job. I went to law school so that I could send bad guys to the penitentiary. I never wanted to be a defense lawyer. I never wanted to get rich, chasing ambulances or suing people. I wanted to do my part to keep this community safe. And when I graduated high school, I could not wait to leave El Paso. And I ended up going to George Washington University in Washington, D.C. And I was there for undergrad, I was there for law school, I worked at the State Department, I worked at the Justice Department, and being there just taught me so much. And we realized, I don't think you appreciate El Paso until you've gone somewhere else. You don't really understand how different it is, how unique it is, how special it is. And once I realized that, I knew this is where I wanted to be, this is where I wanted to practice law. I wanted to work with our law enforcement to solve the crimes that happen here, to fight for the victims here, and like I said, do my part to keep El Paso safe. That's why I'm running. I want to make sure that we handle these very, very serious cases. The Walmart shooting, the murder of Deputy Herrera, the third death penalty case, the Thanksgiving 2018 home invasion, where a whole family was shot. That's what's at stake in this election. I've worked on those cases. And so I think the question that people need to ask themselves is, do you want someone who's actually handled serious cases or not? Someone who's actually dedicated their career to this community, or someone who hasn't? Someone that actually knows what it's like to go in front of a jury of El Pasoans and make that case, or someone who hasn't? And so I'm respectfully asking for your vote when early voting starts next week on June 29th and Election Day, July 14th. Thank you.
Miss Yvonne.
So thanks everybody for tuning in. I am Yvonne Rosales and I'm asking to be your next district attorney. Just as a little side note, if I'm elected, I would be the first female elected in the DA's office. El Paso's never had a female DA, but that would just be the cherry on top. I think out of everything that you've learned today, it should be clear that experience matters. I have 3 times the legal experience that my opponent does. I also have the administrative background that he does not have. If anything we've been taught in Mr. Esparza's 28 years as the current DA, he has only tried 4 high-profile cases, 4 in 28 years. So I think that is a testament to the fact that the elected official is the administrator of the office. We would not expect Sheriff Wiles or Chief Allen to have geared up and entered into the Walmart shooting. No, their job as leaders of law enforcement was to supervise and lead and delegate. And that's what the district attorney is, the elected official. Mr. Montoya has demonstrated he's a trial attorney, and that's wonderful. But the elected official needs to be somebody who can lead the office, who can supervise, who can handle a budget, and who can work with the members of this community. And it takes experience to handle those things. As I stated, I started my career as an assistant district attorney. I worked my way up. I had plenty of trial experience. Every time I have to go to a family court and I present a case to a judge, that is a trial. It is a trial to the judge. I dare you to ask anybody who's ever fought for custody of their children whether they think it's a trial or not, because we use the same set of rules of evidence. We present evidence, we have to do it legally and properly, so those trial skills are used on a daily basis. When I set a case for trial, it's because I truly believe it's a winnable case or my client has really wanted us to go to trial. If it gets dismissed, that's because the DA finally saw that it was not a winnable case for them or they could not proceed. So I only set the most serious cases for trial, and that speaks to my experience. If they're getting dismissed on trial day, then I think that speaks to my knowledge and to my training, and that I can spot a case that is worthy of a trial. So again, I'm asking for your vote to be the next district attorney of El Paso, because it is a huge responsibility in order to lead an office of nearly 200 employees and manage an $18 million budget. We need to have that experience, and it's time for a change of policies and procedures, and that can't come from somebody who's only known Mr. Esparza's policies.
All right, round of applause for our candidates. Okay, so we have 2 fantastic candidates for district attorney. I told you why you should care, and you should trust me because you know me. The fact that FitFam was willing to be here is also a testament to why all of his followers or their followers should care. And also follow both of these candidates on social media. If you have additional questions, submit them to them, because one thing I do know with working, James and I started about the same time as attorneys, okay? In working with him, he's very approachable. Ms. Yvonne is wonderful about that as well. She's so totally accessible all the time. So they care about their constituents, they care about the community. So please, please, I encourage you to ask those questions. Again, we are live here from Working Capital, so shout out to Working Capital in their beautiful space here. Voting. So, as the candidates mentioned, that early voting starts, what, the 29th?
29th.
29th. Okay, information about polling locations is online.
EPCountyVotes.com has all of the early voting locations. You can vote at any early voting location from June 29th to July 10th. All you need is a picture ID and they will accept you at any location.
All right.
And I have to say this, for anybody who's afraid because of the health concerns with COVID and all that, there are going to be a lot of health safety precautions that are put into place. The social distancing markers, the disinfecting wipes, disposable apparatus in order to touch screen the voting machines. So if you're having concerns about going out to vote because of those health concerns, please make sure that they are doing everything possible to make sure that your safety comes first, but don't lose your voice, don't lose your vote.
Right? I mean, so what they're saying is no freaking excuses. All right? So whatever side that you fall on, Team Montoya or Team Rosales, get out there and vote, guys. So I'm signing off for Lawyer Talk Thursday. I will see you next week.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.